Anyone who watches Cracking the Code can see that it's more than some dude sitting in a chair and talking to a camera. Hi, I'm Adam, some dude sitting in a chair talking to a camera, and also a member of the Cracking the Code team. We've worked hours, days, well, years if we're being honest, to bring you some of the finest animations our processors and mouse clicks have to offer. And most of these animations find themselves organized into greater overarching themes. Descending Fours is viewed through the lens of an epic battle between Vikings and dragons. A complicated solo is broken down in a grocery store parking lot. And the Trains animation helps relate the psychological concept of chunking to the problem of hand synchronization in fast guitar playing. But how exactly do we make some of these animations? And how do we settle upon a unified theme? Well, I'm here to answer those questions, at least in part. Animation's a complicated process, and each project seems to bring about some challenge that we've never faced before. So why don't we take things one at a time and look at a personal favorite we like to call the Arpeggio Mystery. This project brought about a few challenges, namely conveying that slightly spooky Jack the Ripper-era London atmosphere, the flailing arms of some turn-of-the-century-era pick characters, and the eventual reveal that this whole world sits atop a cylindrical World War II-era Enigma machine. Each scene needs to be drawn with a cohesive style, and given the creepy parameters we gave ourselves, it looks like we're due for a trip to the Kino von Deutschland. This is German expressionism. It's the visual motif that I wrote papers on as a film studies major in college. German expressionist films of the early 1920s utilized costumes, sets, and even overlays to shape the film's settings around the inner turmoil of its lead characters. Films like The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, The Last Laugh, and Nosferatu were filled with dark shadows and jagged angles, a style that became highly influential over all future depictions of creepy castles.
Strike the rabbit!
With our shape tools, we forewent any and every curve, and we wouldn't be caught dead with the right angle. This ensured that each element of the animation looked as bent and tortured as Troy felt as an angsty teenager trying to figure out how Yngwie played those arpeggios. Our scene development process didn't start out particularly cohesive. Back in the awkward years of our animation development, we would write scene after scene of fun references to arcade video games or Evel Knievel. And while these animations looked great and were fun to watch in short bursts, an entire episode of loosely connected, visually disparate scenes, one after another, quickly proved to be overwhelming to the eyes and ears. It all went by too quickly, and the analogous messages behind the scenes were soon lost in the fray. So over time, we began to conceptualize scenes in a new light. We now interpolate everything in a scene based off one idea. In this case, we knew that everything was going to end up on an Enigma machine, which, as a code-cracking device used in World War II, resonated with the ethos of our show. The Enigma machine-based world suggested a mysterious tone that led to a detective theme in the vein of Sherlock Holmes more than Sam Spade.
We were hoping, Mr. Holmes, that you may be able to shed some light on the occurrences that have puzzled us down here.
The machine's shape also reminded us of a giant, creepy organ grinder, Son's happy dancing monkey. And that soon led us to a circus theme. And for unifying each of these cues, German expressionism made perfect sense. With computer animation, you gain a lot of benefits over traditional filmmaking, and control of lights is a biggie. I mean, turning off the sun is just a click away. And that would take a whole lot of umbrellas on a film set. For Arpeggio Mystery, we chose to limit the amount of light over the scene, like those classic film noirs from the 40s.
There's a speed limit in this state, Mr. Neff. 45 miles an hour.
How fast was I going, officer?
I'd say around 90.
Suppose you get down off your motorcycle and give me a ticket.
We'd keep the intensity of the lights down. And we had their influence fall off quickly over a short distance. We also utilized simulated spotlights, ensuring that our lights would only be pointing in the directions that best fit the scene. We also simulated fog using emitters. Emitters regularly duplicate source particles across determined areas. By choosing a generic fuzzy blob for the source particle and spanning that emitter across the landscape, we're able to give the scene a smoky atmosphere of generic fuzzy blobs that would do Deep Purple proud. As for making those characters move, that was a whole different set of challenges. Now, I'm not about to pretend that Teresa 3 Notes is as intricate as your average Ryan Larkin joint. But these characters required some animation fundamentals to work properly. Each character uses a skeletal system of rigged limbs in order to move. A group named Arm will contain a solid rectangle, and another group named Forearm. Within that forearm group, you'd find a hand, a thumb, a violin bow, whatever you need. For each of these groups, we need to reset the anchor point so that they now pivot along the appropriate axis. We just take careful aim to put those anchor points on the corresponding joints. The arm should pivot at the shoulder. The forearm should pivot at the elbow. And then we have an arm that moves with all the realism you'd expect of an anthropomorphized expressionist pick-man hybrid. And oh, that big old drum that the whole world has been rotating on. Oh, what a pain that was. You see, motion is intended for motion graphics animation, which is closer to 2.5D than 3D. That means flat surfaces only, no thickness, sacrificing dimensionality for efficiency, which is good for our purposes, but sometimes a man needs his extra dimension. So to tackle this textured 3D shape, we either needed to sneak some hidden cameras into Pixar Studios, or we needed to get clever. Clever proved cheaper, so that's what we went with. While motion may not have 3D shapes, it does have 3D replicators. A replicator allows us to create several copies of a source particle in a specific, potentially three-dimensional pattern. And if I took away anything from high school calculus, it's that you can approximate a curve with a series of very thin rectangles. By using thin rectangles in this replicator, it begins to look cylindrical. Another little bonus with these replicators is that you can use a movie as a source particle, and have each replica display a different frame, like looking at a strip of film for a projector stretched out in front of you. With that knowledge, we took our customized ground texture and made a short movie of it moving across a thin strip of workspace, such that each frame of the video produced would be a sliver of that texture. When we finally added the movie as the replicator's source particle and our clever little trick worked, the popping champagne corks could be heard around the world. With jagged, expressionist edges, a sea of fog, light with an emphasis on shadows, characters that are willing to take their hats off to you, and that enigmatic drum that it all sits on, we're able to use animation to create an environment befitting of the mystery surrounding Yngwie's seemingly impossible technique.